Now that Morbius is a movie star, you might find yourself wondering, just who is this classic Marvel foe? You may know his Spider-Man connection, but what about his bond with She-Hulk? Here's everything you need to know about Morbius, the living vampire. Nowadays in Marvel Comics, Morbius often walks the line between a good guy and a bad guy. If you're getting mugged and the living vampire happens to walk by, he'll probably step in and help, but he's also likely to get himself a snack at the same time. When he first showed up in 1971's Amazing Spider-Man number 101, however, there was no anti-hero nonsense going on. Morbius was a stone-cold killer. Amazing Spider-Man number 101 was memorable for a few reasons. Most notably, it was the first issue of the comic that wasn't written by Stan Lee. Roy Thomas took over writing duties, and Lee had left Thomas with a bit of a cliffhanger. Peter Parker had suddenly found himself with 6 arms. So, in this comic, Spider-Man seeks out the Nobel Prize-winning Dr. Morbius, hoping that he can find a cure in the doctor's research. Instead, he finds a blood-sucking vampire with a mean streak. Both Thomas and Jerry Conway, who wrote Morbius's subsequent appearances in Marvel Team Up, told Back Issue in 2009 that they never imagined Morbius would go on to become a dark hero. Conway said, "I more or less thought of him as a one-shot villain." They both agree, though, that the foundation for something more was there in Morbius's first appearance. Conway said both sides of him were always there. He was always supposed to be a fairly sympathetic character. Some fans believe that Morbius was rendered a living vampire as a sneaky way of getting around the comics code, and that his subsequent popularity helped force changes to the code itself. The comics code was a self-imposed industry standard that, among other things, banned any depictions of the undead. Morbius's living status was Marvel's loophole, or so the legend told. The truth is that Morbius's creation was actually a response to the comics code loosening of its rules about vampires, zombies, and other undead creatures. At the same time, Stan Lee wanted to capitalize on the code's newer, more liberal attitude. Roy Thomas has said that he and Lee first discussed using Dracula as the villain in Amazing Spider-Man number 101.
Children of the night, what music they make.
But Lee wanted a costumed villain instead. Ironically, while Morbius didn't create any friction with the comics code, years later another artist claimed to have locked horns with the code over his work on the character. Penciler Ron Wagner worked on the first 14 issues of Morbius the Living Vampire and apparently got in a heap of trouble for his use of sexually explicit drawings in the comic. While Morbius's living status was not a sneaky way around the comics code, it was an important aspect of his character. For one thing, it allowed him to remain in the Marvel Universe for longer than his undead contemporaries. In 1983's Doctor Strange number 62, the Sorcerer Supreme uses his magic to boost the Montesi formula, killing Marvel's version of Dracula and the rest of the world's vampires. Eventually, Dracula would return in the series Night Stalkers, but that comeback was a whole decade in the making. And in the meantime, one vampire remained completely unaffected by any of it: Morbius. Because Morbius's condition has nothing to do with traditional vampirism, Doctor Strange's war on Dracula has no impact on Dr. Morbius, beyond freeing up the playing field from competition, anyway. According to Morbius co-creator Roy Thomas, the conception of the living vampire involved a marriage of various campy science fiction references, though not all of them were intentional. Morbius's name came from the character Dr. Edward Morbius from the 1956 film Forbidden Planet. Apparently, though, this wasn't a conscious choice, and Thomas didn't realize that that's where he had lifted the name from until after the comic was already on the racks. Thomas has also revealed that the inspiration for Morbius's origin as a creature of science fiction rather than fantasy came from a film he had seen in his youth, one in which radiation, not magic, turned a character into a vampire. During his interview with Back Issue, however, he could not remember the film's name. While neither film fits exactly with Thomas's memory, 2 films released in 1957, just a year after Forbidden Planet, could fit the bill of science-created vampires. Not of This Earth features an alien who disguises himself as human and drains victims of their blood. The same year saw the release of The Vampire, about a man who unwittingly contracts vampirism after ingesting pills made of vampire bat blood. One of the most important stories in Morbius's history involves a weird, violent court scene in the pages of Savage She-Hulk. Temporarily cured of his condition, Dr. Morbius is working on ways to help lawyer Jennifer Walters, better known as She-Hulk, from dying. Unfortunately for her, Morbius is due to stand trial for his many crimes. Walters subsequently defends Morbius during the trial and uses a bizarre method to protect her client. To prove Morbius was not in control of his actions while he was a vampire, Walters brings a pair of rabbits into the court and feeds one of them the formula that transformed him. Predictably, the rabbit immediately goes full Holy Grail and kills its furry mate.
Run away! Run away! Run away!
Walters succeeds in getting Morbius's charges reduced, and the living vampire's transformation from outright villain to morally ambiguous anti-hero is complete. The Morbius of the Ultimate Universe was introduced in Ultimate Spider-Man number 95. This version of Morbius is more connected to the vampires of his world than his Marvel Earth Prime counterpart. He's a more traditional undead vampire who even tells Spider-Man that he is the son of Dracula. Ironically, though more attached to the world of the undead than the original, the Ultimate Morbius is not only not a villain, but actually spends much of his time hunting his vampiric brethren. While Marvel officially nailed the coffin on its Ultimate line of comics in 2015 with the Secret Wars tie-in miniseries Ultimate End, the Ultimate line's impact on Marvel's film adaptations can't be ignored. Nick Fury was first drawn as Samuel L. Jackson in Ultimates 6 years before the actor appeared in Iron Man. Black Widow and Hawkeye being a part of the original Avengers lineup is in Ultimate Holdover 2, as is Captain America's World War II era outfit and the alien Chitauri. While the origin of the character in Morbius fits more with the original Marvel version, you could argue some aspects are inspired by the Ultimate line, including his more heroic nature and his conflict with fellow vampire Milo. If it had been up to screenwriter and director David S. Goyer, the Living Vampire's first big screen appearance would likely have predated the MCU by a half-decade at least. In a deleted scene found on the DVD of 1998's Blade, a mysterious figure in a dark trench coat watches from a nearby rooftop as Blade and Karen emerge triumphant from their conflict with La Magra. Goyer, the film's writer, has since confirmed the figure was Morbius and claims that had Goyer gone on to direct Blade 2, Morbius would have been the villain for the sequel. Instead, Guillermo del Toro directed Blade 2, and the story was altered, jettisoning him altogether. It would no doubt be fascinating to sidestep into an alternate reality where Goyer got to write his version of Blade 2. Morbius was a character full of potential for that series, particularly if Goyer meant to stay true to the tragic and more sympathetic nature of the character. Deacon Frost, the villain of Blade, was a ruthless killer, and the villains of Blade 2 weren't much better. A more tortured and conflicted antagonist may have made for an intriguing contrast. Morbius is far from the only Marvel character based on a classic kind of monster, though it took until 2021 to reveal a connection between the living vampire and Calvin Zabo, also known as Mr. Hyde. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans may remember Kyle MacLachlan had a recurring role as Cal on Season 2 of the series.
Oh, and there goes the feeling in my legs.
In the comics, Hyde is a genuine powerhouse, able to hold his own against Earth's mightiest heroes. In the 2021 one-shot Morbius Bond of Blood, it's revealed that Morbius and Zabo have known each other since before either were transformed into their more monstrous selves. Morbius strikes a deal with Zabo in the hopes of saving a child's life, but as you might predict, things don't exactly work out well. More recently, a further connection has been revealed between Morbius's condition and another monstrous Marvel scientist. In 2022's Amazing Spider-Man number 92, Kurt Connors becomes infected with the vampire's condition. The development sends Connors on a rampage and renders him more dangerous than ever. Spidey, Misty Knight, and Colleen Wing then recruit Morbius to help him stop Connors and cure him of his disease. For much of his comic book existence, Morbius has walked a morally ambiguous line. He usually fights on the side of good, but he's a lot less picky about the methods he employs than other heroes. But in 2022, Morbius pole vaulted out of the anti-hero zone into outright villainous territory. In recent years, Michael Morbius has continued to search for a cure to his condition. When he surfaces again in 2022's Amazing Spider-Man number 77, his illness has worsened, sending him on a near-mindless rampage. The Ben Reilly Spider-Man confronts him when he finds Morbius standing over the bodies of a half-dozen or so victims. The vampire attacks Spidey without provocation, and the issue ends with Morbius sinking his teeth into Riley's neck. With Riley weakened by Morbius's attack, it's up to Misty Knight and Colleen Wing to take Morbius down in the following issue. Unfortunately, the Beyond Corporation takes the opportunity to experiment on Morbius against his will. On the bright side, they stabilize his condition in the process, so that, when he's revived in Amazing Spider-Man number 92, he's back to his old self. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite comic book characters are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.